heard me.
Yes.
I am in love with you. And I know that love is just a shout into the void, and that oblivion is inevitable, and that we're all doomed, and that one day all of our labors will be returned to dust. And I know that the sun will swallow the only earth we will ever have. And I am in love with you. Sorry.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Yarn Y'all. I am Rachel, your ADHD host, and this is a channel where I chit-chat about anything that I'm crafting on, my yarny adventures, as It's a Seraph's podcast might say, and we're here for episode 11. Can you guys believe we're already episode 11? I mean, I know that that's kind of what you get when you film every week, is like mini episodes, but I am excited to share with you guys what we're doing this week and give you an update on books I've been reading. This week's crafting energy has been a little bit different, so you'll excuse me if it's a little scattered. Also, I don't know if you can tell from the lighting in here, it is thunderstormy and rainy, and like we might have light and then we might not have light, and so we're just working with it. So like, I know this entire half of my face is in shadow. I apologize. I'll try to, like, anything I'm showing you guys on camera will try to be on this side where I've got better natural light. And I hear Pearl squeaking, so I'm gonna go check on her before we jump into the projects, the whips, and a little bit after that we'll get into books and everything. But sit tight, I'll be right back. Okay, so Pearl's awake, but she is hanging out playing on her floor mat, so we're going with that. She is like this close to being able to crawl, and so I'm taking advantage of the fact that she's not really gonna go anywhere, and I'm just gonna, keep an ear out, and we may get interrupted midstream if she ends up needing me. But on to the whips. So I think we're gonna start with the thing that's I'm not going to talk about my Sorvetti. That's like my longest ongoing whip right now. I'll link to last week's video and you guys can tell me what you think. But the thing about that whip is that I had decided, last video I asked you guys, like, should I do lace? Should I just, like, what do I do? Pull back and then like knit it taller so I don't have quite so much chest showing. And Marley and Luke, my husband, and me all voted for lace. So that's the current plan. However, I am not really ready to like jump into that. It's been kind of like lots of stuff going on over here. Nothing like specific, but just lots of little things. And I do think that I want to like take my time and make sure that like I'm picking up all the stitches very nicely and working that lace very evenly. And so I'm not ready to jump in yet, and it's all like right here detailing, and so I want it to look good. I don't want to rush with it, so that is kind of like hibernating for now. Sorry if I'm like shaking you guys. I actually had the camera over here and decided to move it back to last week's position just so that I wasn't like shaking it as it's sitting here on my couch. So if there's minor earthquakes, I apologize. That's me, not the environment. So, but yeah, so we're not going to talk about the sorbet. It's hibernating. Nothing new has happened with it, so I'm not going to show you guys. But I am going to show you my lento. And like, it is in an easy stage, but it's not in a mindless stage. And what I mean by that is I have done one sleeve completely and I'm on to the second sleeve, but I've only was like sort of following the pattern with the sleeves. And so I need to count like exactly, like, so this is where my last decrease took place on my first sleeve, and this is like the point until I got to the ribbing. And so you can see there's like quite a few rows, and I need to figure out how many rows and it's just a matter of sitting down and counting them. But how many rows between the last decrease and the ribbing, and then the pattern says to do like X number of rounds for ribbing. I just went until I thought it looked good. I know I did more than what the pattern called for, and so I'm going to need to like do some counting here to make sure that the sleeves match up. So we're mindless because it's stockinette in the round. There is now no longer any more decreases for the sleeve that I'm working on right now. It is just becoming a thing. I can't believe it. So yeah, I think last week I had done like maybe this much of the first sleeve, and when I got my DPNs in the mail, like got them situated, which I shared with you guys a little bit last time, I was able to just like fly right through this. I did find that when I got down to the smaller needle size as the pattern calls for, I was just really having a problem with like the yarn catching on these very cheap bamboo DPNs, and it's a smaller size that I actually had some metal DPNs in, so I did like maybe 2 or 3 rounds of the like crappy ones and then switched over to my metal ones and felt like it was just like a dream to work up, even though I will say that the metal ones I had, like I noticed while I was working with them, like I pulled them off of the packaging to work with them, so I had never used them before, but I noticed there was like flaking and chipping at the end of the metal, and so I was like, well, that's kind of a disappointment, but I guess that's what you get what you pay for. So but either way, I was able to get this little cuff finished. I don't really love knitting and purling like this, but I did find that like I found a rhythm and was able to like get this knocked out pretty quickly, like much quicker than I'd ever done ribbing before. So I suppose that's just a function of getting better at a craft, is you're like, oh look, like I can knock this out with like much less stress and drama than before. I bound off as the pattern calls for. I do feel like it's a little it has very little stretch compared to the rest of the shirt, so I do have to be kind of mindful when I'm putting my hands in. Like I can't just be like shove my arm through the cuff portion, but other than that element of it, like it fits really nice. It is a bracelet length pattern, and I stuck with the pattern because as a mom, I've heard other YouTubers talk about this, I don't wear a lot of long sleeve stuff, so I really hadn't like thought through what my preference would be, but I am washing my hands a lot. I do the dishes, I am changing my daughter's diaper, and so like having something that isn't gonna like hang and get in the way was like obviously a bonus for this pattern, and so stuck with the pattern and did, you know, pretty much as called for, except for maybe like 1 or 2 rounds plus or minus what they said for the ribbing. So that's this first sleeve done. I'm on to the second one. As I mentioned, I'm like done with the decreases, so now it's just knit however many rounds, do the ribbing, and bind off. So this sleeve is like nearly there, and then I just have the body to finish up. So this thing is almost done. I don't know if it will be done by next video. I think it will be, just because it's like so close, but I'm not too concerned about it being finished. Like if I finish it before the next video, great. If I don't, that's fine too. Because I had finished my mom's tee a couple episodes back, and the sorbet is like almost there and this one's almost done, I was like, okay, like all of my projects are mostly done. So I even though none of them except for my mom's is done and blocked and out of the house, I felt okay letting myself start another project. So I was raiding my yarn stash just to see what I had, because I don't want to buy additional yarn, and I was debating between using, like, I've got a few small quantities that I could do like a really small tank or a really small shirt with those quantities of yarn, and I already have been like eyeballing patterns. I just haven't like said this yarn is definitely going for this pattern. I just have some general ideas. But I kind of want something that's gonna work up kind of fast. I also, a couple weeks ago, under the influence of Tony Lipsy, bought from AliExpress these double-sided, like it's a Tunisian crochet kit. And so I've done Tunisian crochet. I really like it. I am not an expert, and I've only done maybe like 1 or 2 practice swatches, and then like maybe 3 finished objects, and only one of them turned out in a way that I'm like, I am so proud of this. I made a thing. Actually, I take that back. There's 2 things. One I've gifted and one is in my home still, and I wear it. It's like a shawl blanket thing. And so I wanted to do more with Tunisian crochet, and I've been mentally playing with the idea of making a Tunisian crochet blanket, but I really wasn't ready to like sign on for that because it's also a self-drafted concept. And so I thought, okay, I don't want to do a blanket yet. I'm not really in the headspace for that. And I do have these hooks I really want to put to use. And I knew I had this huge ball of hooks and loops yarn. I've since lost the yarn band. I'm pretty sure I bought this and later realized, like, what am I even gonna do with this? So I really have no idea what the content is. I'm pretty sure it's a linen, not a linen, a cotton and acrylic yarn. It has like almost no stretch, and it's just like got that nice cotton feel. So I thought, you know, I don't want to crochet it into something because then it will just feel like very hard. And I don't know that I want to knit with this because I don't know if I'm gonna wear this. And so I thought, okay, we'll make like an outer layer and see, you know, what we think of that. So I found some Tunisian crochet patterns for garments, and I was like, ooh, I am very interested in this. And I, of course, did not look up the name before starting to film, but I have started on a sweatshirt type of a situation made out of Tunisian crochet. And this is my favorite way to Tunisian crochet. It's in the round, so like you pick up loops with the first pass, and then instead of going backwards like traditional Tunisian crochet, you actually use the other hook to pull the loop on a different yarn strand. You pull through the reverse. And so like instead of zigzagging like this, you've got one needle hook sort of leading the way, picking up loops as if you were going to pick up loops to knit, and then you pull the cable through and have another hook chase that original hook through those loops, and like crochet off the back. I know I'm not describing this well at all. If you are curious about Tunisian crochet, like go look some stuff up because it is such a unique, untapped craft. And I have in the past really liked the material that I've made. I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel about this because this material is like super dense. You cannot see through it at all, and I don't know if that's a function of the fact that I'm using a much thicker yarn compared to what the pattern calls for, and I am sticking with the crochet hooks size that the pattern calls for. So I'm not really sure because I am not as fluent in Tunisian as I am in reading stitches for crochet, or even like at this point I'm feel more confident knitting than I do with Tunisian crochet. But I have made things with Tunisian, and I think it'll be fun to just see where I get with this. I may end up frogging it because like I really don't have that much yarn to make a whole garment. So we'll see. I am making the second size in this pattern, which is like what my measurements are. No, it's a third size. So she goes 0, 1, 2, and so on. And I'm size 2, which is the third size, but it's, yeah. anyway. So I really think this pattern is written like so nicely. It is different than any other pattern that I've followed so far. Not, again, like I'm highly experienced with patterns, but like a lot of knitting patterns, like the Lento, for example, you have your like size alterations within the pattern. And so it's like knit X number of stitches, and you choose from the parentheses, like, are you size 1? Well, you pick the first number. If you're size 2, you pick the second number. If you're size 3, and so on. With this pattern, it's really interesting. She says knit a stitch count, and it's literally blank. And she explains the rest of the pattern. And in the bottom of that same page is like a little chart that says like A stitch count, B rounds, C something. And that chart corresponds to your sizes. It's way different than anything I've ever seen, and I really like it. And I'm just thinking like, okay, the pattern is 16 pages long, but if I were to print out like the main portions and just like pen in my size count and my stitch count in those blank spaces she's left, like I can see this being a really smart way of writing patterns. And the way my brain works, it's really easy to read. I don't get confused. Was I doing this stitch count or this stitch count? Like, it's all nicely organized. So I highly recommend it. I'm sorry I don't remember the name of the pattern or who published it, like the pattern designer, but I will link it. I will say it was a $10 pattern, and I bought it off of her website. Like, I found the design through Ravelry, but you cannot purchase it through Ravelry. So you just go to her website, purchase it there. The only thing I will say, I wasn't like super paying close attention when I was reading through everything. And basically, if you think you might make patterns from this pattern designer, you want to make an account on her website first and then purchase your patterns. That way all of your patterns show up on your account, because I did it in the opposite order, and she even says like, don't do that. But it just requires an extra step to like bring your patterns under the umbrella of your user in her website if you do it the way I did. But if you make your username, then your patterns automatically show up in your account. So anyway, just a little pro tip. I'll link all of this information below in the comment section, and I will keep you guys posted on how this goes. I hear purl, and this actually is not the longest whip on my needles. I skipped one, so I'll pause, go check on her, and then we'll come back and talk about that hair. It's not really finished, it's more modified. And that is this little critter right here. She is a little mouse that I sort of self-drafted using, different basic crochet stitch shapes. So just little cylinder tubes, and she's got herself some overalls. She was bald and had a hat, and originally she was like a little boy mouse, and then I decided to add hair because Tilly the hair will not be done in time for the baby shower, and I really wanted to have something to give to my sister-in-law. And I thought, that isn't really like, it's a lot of work to give to a baby, and it's also one of the very first ones that I've made from this pattern design. And so like, I have a habit of giving away stuff that I make for the very first time. And Pearl's gonna sit up one sec. So I do tend to give, like, the fox, the very first toy I ever knitted was a fox, and I gave that to a friend, and I'm so glad that I did. Like, he likes it. I gave it to my friend's son for his first birthday, and he loves it. He carries it around the house with him, and so I'm really glad that I gave it to him. However, now I have no evidence of like the first really awful knitted toy I made. Like, I love that he loves it, and also I have no record of like, this is where I started and this is what I've grown to. And so because it's the first time I've executed this pattern, or I'm executing this pattern, I do want to keep it for myself. So it's being selfish, but it's true. And so I needed to come up with another gift for my new niece. And so here's what we came up with, this little cutie. It actually looks so much better with the hair, and I'm just like, why didn't I take that second, like that final step, and just finish it off altogether sooner? So, but now it's ready to go home. You being nosy. Ready to go home to its new family, and the baby shower is today. It's so funny because I actually got confused and thought the baby shower was yesterday, and so I spent yesterday morning like finishing up the doll, getting her hair figured out, and a ribbon for her and everything, and I didn't have to do that yesterday. Like, I'm glad I did, and I'm glad that like I don't have to think about it at all today when the actual shower is. But it certainly was a little bit of a waste of time, because I even like drove to the baby shower and then realized I was like, oh, today is not this day, it's actually the day before the shower. So anyway, that is, I guess, mom brain for you. But it's ready to get wrapped back up. I had it wrapped, and hey, you're not supposed to be looking. Oh gosh. Okay, so I don't know where we were, but yeah, this doll is getting wrapped up back in her present, and she is going to go home with my sister-in-law for her new baby, along with like some diapers and stuff. But here she is. This is an object that I finished months and months ago, and then finished, and is ready to gift. So I will say that if you have a big family or there's a lot of children in your life, baby blankets are sweet, but at least here in Texas, they're not really that necessary. Plus, handmade objects do tend to have a little bit more, they just need to be treated more delicately than like the blankets that we were gifted when we had Pearl. Like, those just go in the laundry. And so even though we do have some handmade baby blankets, if you have a lot of little ones in your life, learning how to make these little dolls, whether they be cute or dinosaurs or monsters or like precious little rabbits, like they, at least for crochet, they go much faster than making a whole blanket, and the child loves it even more than they would normally love a blanket, and it's special. So if you're needing gift ideas, I cannot recommend this style of gift. And plus, because you know they still don't really have crochet machines, this is going to be so unique, so one of a kind, and so doable. So if you're interested in learning more about crochet content, crochet dolls, let me know. I'm obviously just going to share with you guys what I'm working on my like journey of crafting. But I recently, even though like I really love knitting, and I also really love Tunisian crochet and all the other things I do, to be honest, like cooking and working out and playing with my daughter, I have been hankering for some good crochet. So I'm glad that I have her to work on, them things to work on, and to see this finished is satisfying. And so if you need an easy win, maybe think about some crochet stuff, because I know for me, I definitely am reserving space in my crafting adventures to work on crochet projects. So that's enough about this. I've really talked a lot about it, but I promised you an update on Tilly the hare. I think I started to show you a little bit, but let's really get into it. So I have not sewn it shut, but I think as of last week, I had done maybe like this much of the body, so it's worked bottom up. And when I filmed and then was talking to Luke about it, I was like, wow, this thing is definitely not going to be done in time. And I know I knit faster when I knit in the round or like a spiral versus back and forth flat with like purling involved. And so even though I didn't want to change because I thought it might change my tension, I decided it's just going to be a stuffed doll. Like, nobody's going to notice the difference except for maybe me. So I went ahead and I joined in the round shortly after we got done filming. I didn't leave a stitch marker or progress keeper. Oh no, I did actually. So this was where I was at last time, and you can see, like, if you follow that around, I did quite a bit more before I actually joined in the round, but then I did join in the round and did all of this work, and so I'm glad I did. I see why the designer has these patterns worked flat and then seamed, because when you do this color work, it is much easier to do flat color work than it is to do like carrying floats, or I'm not really sure if you could work this in Tarja. I have not looked into Intarsia enough to know. But yeah, this would have been easier, better tension, if you will. You can see there's like some ripples here. It just would have looked neater and nicer if I had worked it flat. But I enjoyed working it in the round, and it really did work much faster. I will say, after like 2 days of focusing solely on this, I was like, well, that's it. This doll is not gonna, Tilly the hare will not be finished in time. And so we need a plan B. And that's when I brought in the mouse. And so we will have a special gift for my new niece. I think her name is gonna be Wilma Faye, in honor of my husband's grandmother, who actually just recently passed, and my sister-in-law loves the name Wilma, and even though grandma didn't like her name, I know that my sister-in-law liked it, and to have the familial attachment, like, it's just a bonus. So but this is what I have for Tilly the hare. She is partially stuffed. We're not seamed, so I'm just like kind of holding it together here, but this is roughly what it's gonna look like. And you can see, like, it's gonna be quite a large doll. And so actually, let me show you guys the goose in comparison. Okay, so I think this pattern is from, I want to say it's Papushka Bunny. She's a Ukrainian pattern designer, and like, my work is not representative of hers. Hers is beautiful. Mine kind of looks like an angry duck. He's not truly finished. I need like eyebrows and maybe to like steam the face so it looks less angry and more cute. Her patterns are darling. But so here is the goose duck that I have finished, and here is Tilly the hare's body. So you can see, like, they're actually gonna be pretty dang close to like the same size. And at this point I just have like ears and legs and a tail and arms to make, but it feels like a lot. And so, especially because I'm knitting on such a small gauge, I'm using sock needles, and these are number 2 or 2.75 millimeter needles, and so they're very tiny on a I believe we established it was a worsted weight. Yeah, it's a number 4 medium Aran worsted yarn, and so it's just really taxing on your hands to work so small. And so I wasn't up for trying to like blow through the arms, legs, and ears and then seam everything in such a short amount of time, especially because the ears are also have a color work detail in them. And so it was just like, I wasn't ready for that. So I will probably jump back in with Tilly the hare this coming week, and maybe we'll have some more solid progress to show you, and she will look more hair-like. The thing that's so nice about knitting is that, like, you use almost no yarn. Like, that is a major benefit to knitting versus crocheting. Like, when I crochet, I mean, I wouldn't use a full ball in crochet either, but like, I keep feeling this yarn and thinking like, wow, I'm almost out. Like, I probably will need to go to the store, but I'm not buying any yarn unless I need it or there's some other special occasion. And so I've been like, let's just use this up, and then I'll have other whips I can work on before I really need to go buy more yarn. This is Hobby Lobby's. I love this cotton. It's a cotton yarn. I find that they're generally pretty good at being consistent with their colors, and I figure, like, who cares if a rabbit has slightly different color tone? It's a rabbit. Like, they have different colors in the wild anyway. So even if I were to run out, it would be fine. But I think I am not going to run out. And I'm probably just going to, because it is hard on my hands, I want to make steady progress on this because I do want to have Tilly finished. I think I'm just going to set aside like maybe half an hour twice a week to make progress on this, but no marathon knitting on this. Like, it is too hard on the hands to try to marathon knit something like this. So here we are, 3 minutes into a ramble on Tilly the hare, but we've made progress, but we're on pause. So I think those are the only whips and FOs I have for you. This little self-drafted mouse that I had kind of hopped in the middle there, so we're kind of all over the place with this podcast, but let's take a pause. Okay, so one other whip that I had been sort of working on, but it's like very casual. I mentioned that I am wanting to save room for crochet dolls specifically in my crafting time, and I think that's just because like I'd kind of gotten over like a hurdle with Scrappy Sally, and I was enjoying working on her again. So she's still really crazy looking. I have not decided what I'm gonna do about like this part of her face, because yeah, that's a little crazy, but I don't know. I've left room for creativity here. You'll see as I get into the final details, but I've got more of her body done. I will say, I was telling Luke about this last night, even though I've made this pattern like over 50 times, I hadn't made it recently, and so I'm like starting to forget what my stitch count is on like this pattern. And I think I'm back into it. Like, I think it's fairly back into the like mindless crochet territory again. But I did work on her this week a little bit during like church, and she's, you know, grown from last week. I think last week she was only like this big. So we are slow and steady moving forward with her. I'm not like too worried about having an FO with this. I just, you know, said before, I'm using up yarn that's in my stash, and I think the next challenge with this will be just making choices about like arms and legs and tails. Do I want to continue using the yarn I've been working with, or do I want to jump into like a whole nother scrap ball? But I mean, I do have enough yarn to make her all one thing, so I might just do that. We'll see. But I was looking through my doll collection of like things that I could post for sale or give away, and I was realizing it's getting kind of lean. Like, there are some really great dolls in there that I haven't shown you guys yet, but I think some of them I've like grown attached to and I couldn't sell or give away. So maybe we'll have a doll parade next week. We'll see. But that's pretty much all of my FOs and all of my whips and all of my crafty adventures for this week. So kind of a disconnected episode, but I want to talk next about books. So here we are, on to the book content. First, we'll talk about some of the like books I've been listening to, reading, and then I have a few crafty books. So if you were here for the knitting or crochet content and then you were like, I'm out because I don't care about books, like, stick with me because I have some cute ones I want to share with you all, so that are crafty related, crafty adjacent. So the first books that I finished this week were the rest of the Chronicles of Narnia. I'm counting it as kind of like one book because it was one audio download, but I listened to The End of the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, The Silver Chair, and The Last Battle. I feel like I'm missing one. Anyway, so good. I have definitely expressed my love for C.S. Lewis before in previous episodes, but it is so interesting to read these children's books as an adult and in light of the historical perspective of this author's life experience, having been in World War I as like a combatant and being like a survivor of World War II, and watching feminism on the rise and watching socialism and different like pushback against certain world economic systems and cultural systems, and like just it's so interesting to see his commentary on that, and then also to see like him pulling concepts from historical stories as well. So you can just like I can see parallels happening, and I'm like, oh, wow, all this in a kid's book. so fascinating. Especially I feel like The Last Battle, like such a depressing book in a way, and incredibly hopeful too, in the right perspective, and tons of dimension for such a small book. Like I'm pretty sure the printed copy is like this big. So if you're an adult and you maybe read them before but you haven't read them as an adult, I recommend going back and listening or reading them, even if you don't buy into all of C.S. Lewis's premises. Like just so deep, and definitely a product of the time that he grew up in. So anyway, enough about C.S. Lewis. The other book that I have been listening to was on the recommendation of one of my friends. She has been bugging me to read Divine Rivals, and I say bugging only like in a kind way. I've read some of the other books that she's recommended, and I think her and I do have some degree of different literature taste, because like one of the books that I loved, she was like, I just couldn't get into it, and I've felt that way about some of her other recommendations. Like by the time we got to the end of the story, I was like, okay, like I see the appeal here, and I see the hook for the second book, but like I think a good series and a good novel have the same thing in common, and that first book can be a standalone. Like if you're telling me that I have to get past the first book to enjoy the rest of the series, like I don't buy it, you know. People say that about the A Court of Thorns and Roses books, that like you have to get through her first book, it's world building, blah blah blah. I think that if you expect me to support you or to consume any of your content, you have to hook me in the beginning. And I understand, like, oh, if it's your first novel and you've improved, like, that's one thing. But if you, like, for Sarah J. Maas, she has published this brilliant series in the Throne of Glass series, and then she, like, tripped in her second series. And, like, I just don't think that that should be so. Like, if you've already accomplished writing a book series that was, like, great, then I have high expectations for like your first book of your next series. And that wasn't the case for her. And that wasn't the case for some of these other books that my friend had recommended. However, sorry, enough hating on books. Divine Rivals, so good, and very clever, very thoughtfully written. Like I was into it from the beginning. The characters were like characters I could embrace. The plot line was one I could really enjoy. And then because I knew that there was a second book, and I think there will be more, I was getting close to the end. Like I was in the last quarter, and I was like, how are they going to wrap this up? And am I going to be dissatisfied about the way that they deal with these relationships? No, they didn't. She didn't choose the cowardly way out, because I do feel like sometimes shows and books choose the cowardly way out of a relationship to extend the drama or the story, or like to continue a narrative. And that cowardly, I'm calling it cowardly because I haven't really thought about another way of describing it, but like that easy way out to like end a relationship or ruin a relationship or whatever, because we can't possibly have them like live happily ever after, because then there's no need for a second or third book. This author was really smart about the way that they tied up relationships and left an avenue for more story. And so I just thought that was great. I'm reading the second one. I think it's called Ruthless Vows. And both of these books are by Rebecca Ross. Pretty sure that's her name. I'm just listening to them on Audible. They are so good so far. And I love it when I'm reading a book and I either very obviously or I have like a very pronounced suspicion that they are borrowing from another author, or that they are mimicking another author or influenced by another creator that I'm familiar with. So like there is a line very early in the second book that I'm like, she stole that right out of Pride and Prejudice. And I'll have to find you guys the quote from talking about like great authors and artists using other authors and artists' work, because I'm all for it. Like, obviously I'm against plagiarism, and I appreciate original ideas, but sometimes an author or artist writes something so plainly or so beautifully or so succinctly that you're like, why do I need to invent it? Like, let me just borrow your phrase here. And so I feel like that's what happened with that particular line. And if you've read Pride and Prejudice or seen the movies as many times as I have, you will read that line or hear that line and you're like, that's the one she's talking about. So my friend that recommended these books, I don't think she's actually like a big Jane Austen nut, and so I'm gonna have to suck her into the dark side. But if you are a fan of Jane Austen and familiar with Pride and Prejudice, you will read that line and appreciate it. So that is all I have to say about the Divine Rival series. They're chef's kiss. I'm almost done with the second book, but I'm not there yet. So I don't want to say any more. I don't want to spoil anything. But if you're thinking about reading them, just know that it'll be worth your time. So the only other book that I want to chit chat about before I wrap things up, because I know it's been all over and kind of a longer podcast, but these books. So I know they're coming in backwards for you guys, but they are the Animal Friends of Pick-a-Pow book 1 and book 3. I don't have the second one. I don't know if I'll ever buy the second one, simply because I have so many pattern books and I'm like, when will I ever make all of these? I want to make all of them, but 2 is enough for now. But I'm so glad that I have these, and there's a couple reasons why. First of all, these little animals on here that she has instructions for how to make each one, so cute. And if you have never crocheted, this is a very good book to start with, even if you are like, I've never even picked up a crochet hook. I won't say that they are super beginner friendly, but if you are an adventurous beginner, or you're willing to like keep going until you get it like I am, you have everything that you need in this one book. She talks about stitches and yarn and hooks and yarn over versus yarn under, which I think if you are sort of familiar with crochet but maybe not like extremely fluent, you might not have realized that there was even a difference, or that there was a main way that people do it. But this author goes through all of that with beautiful like pictures. It's well illustrated, good explanations, but her creatures, her little animal friends that she has made, the color palettes are beautiful. I'm tempted to just do exactly what she does in her patterns, and then I'm also tempted to go off script. So I'm paging here to find the pictures of all of the friends that she has in these books. But this is the first Animal Friends of Pick-a-Pow book, and so many friends. I want to make all of them. But I guess maybe second or third best thing about these books is that each little friend has a backstory, and the backstory is funny. And so like, I'm not gonna read this to you because I am not a great reader, especially out loud, especially under pressure of like filming. But you know, my daughter's only 6 months old, so she does not like have the bandwidth to read anything. But I wanted to do something that was like all three of us could do together. And so I asked my husband Luke, I was like, you're a really good reader, why don't you read these little stories to us, and Pearl and I will hang out on the couch and watch you, and then you have the backstory of the little creatures and you can help me decide which ones to make for our daughter. So he read like 2 of them last night and was just cracking up. And so at the beginning of every single one of these patterns, like Ramon the donkey, like, how good. And each one has like a little backstory. One of my friends asked me to make her one of these dolls, and originally I was gonna make her Rosie the cheetah, but then we decided not to, and instead I made her the whale. I don't think the whale's in this book. Oh no, it's not in this book. It's in this book. And so this little whale right here, first of all, not little. And I think I maybe filmed about this in my like first podcast. I hope I did. If I didn't, I'll include, even if I did, I'll try to include some photos here. But this is the whale. Yeah, Angelica the whale. Angelica is a blue whale, and if you missed the fact, the largest known animal to have ever lived. Yes, larger than dinosaurs. Please don't tell Eduardo Cutosaurus. He thinks he's the largest. Like, how funny. So she's a speech pathologist, and she's friends with the hen that you could make. And anyway, these little creatures having backstory make me want to make them all the more. So if you're into really cute things and you are a crocheter or want to be a crocheter, I recommend these books. Either one, I'll link them below. I have not like set up affiliate anything, and so like me linking them is just a way for you to get to them. It's not that like I make any money on this at all. So but I want you to be able to find such fun, sweet, cute things and make it easy for you. So that's all for now, folks.